moving on to book 9, the final Váḥid of the Persian Bayán. Book 9, or the 9th Váḥid, is the second shortest book of the Bayán of Farsi. It contains, or it rather consists of only 10 gates or chapters. In the Tam edition, it starts on page 311 and ends on page 328, making it about 17 pages in length, with each page consisting of 19 handwritten lines. In the Nicolas French translation, book 9 is 30 pages long, which takes up about 18% of the 4th volume of Le Bayán Persan. Only 3 excerpts from this incomplete Váḥid have been translated into English by the Baha'i World Center, and they are primarily from the chapters 3, 4, and 10. This book is incomplete, as you recall, because all the chapters of each Váḥid were supposed to be 19, so there's only 10. And the Bab had originally intended, in chapter 1, he talks about his intention of revealing 19 Váḥids, which each Váḥid consisting of 19 chapters. Now, a point to make: the Arabic Bayán does exceed the 10 chapters, and in fact, it completes book 9 and goes up to, I believe, book 11, and completes that. So those were revealed after, and those are primarily some other laws that have been added. In future courses, we may just explore that, but they are not I believe of as significance. I think the Bab has really covered everything that he wanted to cover, and then some, in the Persian Bayán. And you will see the chapter, the book 10 is, it has some very remarkable laws and very different, and you'll see now it zeroes in either on something that is very specific, or again echoes the theme of some of the previous chapters in the previous Váḥids as well. Okay, so moving on to chapter 1. So the first chapter of the last Váḥid of the Bayán of Farsi is rather complex and abstruse exposition of the advent of him whom God shall make manifest. The Bab writes, the substance of this gate is that the glory of each land hath been for God, lillah. And beyond that, I can't really share with you, because it gets into a really deep and multifaceted explanation and exposition, and various specific laws that are really only pertain to him whom God shall make manifest. Unfortunately, no parts of this chapter have been translated into English by the Baha'i World Center, nor any parts of it has been discussed by Dr. Saidi in his book. Chapter 1 of book 9 consists of about 22 handwritten lines in the original language. In chapter 2, which only consists of about 16 handwritten lines in the original language, the Bab discusses, among other related brief topics, the virtues of the Shakasta Nasta Alif script. This is very dear to my heart. Some of you know that, because my late father was a master calligrapher, but this is also very significant, because in this revelation, the script that has been chosen by God has been singled out as the medium by which revelation has taken place, and even divine commentaries of Abdul Baha and Beloved Guardian are all written in the Shakasta Nasta Alif script. So I want to share with you, and these are excerpts from another presentation that I did, in fact, the talk I gave about almost 10 years ago at the ABS conference, General Conference. But this I wanted to share with you, and then we can get into a little bit of that. So the Bab in the Persian Bayán writes, in Persian هیچ خطی در این ظهور محبوبتر نزد ظاهر به ظهور نبوده الا خط شکسته حیوان نه میت، زیرا که اکثر با تعلیم می نویسند ولی میت است نه حیوان. حسن آن با حیوان بودن آن است که مثل آن بالنسبه به خط نسخ در حیوانیت مثل جوان است با کامل. هر شیئی در حد خود محبوب بوده نزد خداوند و هست و لتعلمون ذریاتکم ابحاء الخطوط و امنعها عندكم لعلكم بذلك يوم قيامة عند ربكم تفتخرون. Translation of this excerpt. No script is more beloved in this revelation by the manifestation of the revelation, i.e. the Bab, than the lively shikaste script, khatte shikaste hayawan, and not the lifeless one. For the majority of people write the shikaste script as per rules of instruction or convention, but that is lifeless and not lively or animate. The merit of the script lies in its liveliness. Teach your offspring from the most glorious scripts, al-Baha al-Khutut, and the most precious of them that ye may possess, so that perchance through this ye may stand proud before your Lord in the day of resurrection. Also, in the Arabic Bayán, in the 6th Váḥid, chapter 11, the Bab also commands a very similar. It says, لَتُعَلَّمُنَّ خط الشكسته فإن ذلك ما يحبه الله وجعله باب نفسه للخطوط. Teach them, your children, the shikaste script, for God truly loves the script. He hath made the shikaste script his own gate to the other scripts, so that ye may write in such manner that through it your hearts may break free from their stupor. Now, just a little introduction about what shikaste. In the 18th century, around 1700 Persia, a new style was developed which derived its characteristic from the ta'liq and the nasta'liq style. It became known as the shikaste nasta'liq, literally meaning broken nasta'liq, which is characterized by an exaggerated density in the superstructure letters. Now, an example of these, this is a shikaste of a page attributed to Darwish Abdul Majid Talaqani. Darwish Abdul Majid Talaqani, Abdul Baha makes mention of his name in one of his writings, is the renowned Persian master calligrapher who is considered by most to have perfected the script. This shikaste was originally developed for court transcription, royal court transcription. It's almost like a shorthand. It's very flowy, and it was never meant to be originally as a sort of a script for beautification, and especially it was in Persian, not in Arabic at all. The Arabic has its own naskh and thuls and raqa and a few other that are specifically for Quranic sort of transcriptions, if you will. So the shikaste was a very unique style. This is also a more of a zoomed in version of it. This is Darwish Abdul Majid Talaqani. It's beautiful, absolutely a beautiful specimen from a museum. He says many of these are from museums that I have taken and I'm sharing here with you. This is another one from a letter signed by Darwish Abdul Majid Talaqani from 1769-1770 in the shikaste script. Now, I'm going to take you to the central figures of the faith. This is a letter that you may have seen, a photographic copy of the Bab's tablet to the 19th letter of the living. It's the more extensive out of these letters, which Shoghi Effendi in the opening pages of the Dawn Breakers had a photographic facsimile of them placed. These are in the International Baha'i Archives. Now, if you look, these are the Bab, Bahá'u'lláh, Abdul Baha, and Shoghi Effendi all wrote in shikaste. And I have not seen any particularly the two revealers. I have not seen any tablets by the Bab or Baha'u'lláh that is actually not in Shikaste. I have not, and I've looked at many. So definitely, it's the de facto script, the script that is been used in this revelation. Now, the Shikaste is also a little bit challenging to read as well, and the Bab particularly made it even harder to read by not using the diacritical dots, the nokte. He was the nokte, very fascinating, but he avoided the use of nokte in his writings. So it made it very difficult. Now, today, there are only very few people that can read the writings of the Bab, without the dots. My father was one of them. And I personally can't. Reading Shikaste is not as easy as some of the more stylish, if you will, scripts like the Nasta'alir, which is currently the script in Iran. It's used, and in Iran they use Shikast Nasta'alir as well, but for all the signs and everything, particularly in Iran and in Persian, is Nasta'alir. And then also there's Naskh as well, which is even more legible than the two scripts. So this is the Bab, and then this is, for example, you can see this at the beginning, Bismillah. It does not have the dot under the Be, and then again the rest of it, I can't tell you what they are. I can see the opening of this line says Subhanallah, but that's about it. The rest of it, some of them you can recognize, some of them you can't. Now, I brought you also these. These are, we had made reference, these are three separate undated tablets of the Bab revealed in Arabic and penned in his own hand in Shikasti script. You recall the circles that the women, especially, he made mention that women would write the script in circles and the men's in the form of a pentacle. So this is the Bab, and then there's a bit of a zoomed version of that here. This one you can read from here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki Yawm ad-Din Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. So this one is Surah Al-Fatiha, but then it continues on in there in the handwriting of His Holiness the Bab. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. These were actually the reason why I got my hands on, essentially, were published in with some of these Azali manuscripts as well. So they're in the possession of. But the Bab has made few of these. We have so many of such things, such tablets, beautifully, gorgeously done by the Bab in his original hand that are preserved in the International Baha'i Archives. This is that pentacle that I was telling you about. There's few of them. An undated Arabic tablet of the Bab penned in his own hand in Shikasti script. So these are all in the Shikasti script in the shape of a 5-pointed star representing the human temple. A little bit of a zoomed version of it comes up here. This one I can read. There are some ones with dots. This one, the Bab is using the dots in there. Shahadallahu annahu la ilaha illahu, I bear witness that there is no God but God. Okay, and that's just the opening of it. And but I'm sure these all have been deciphered. Now I'm going to take you I'm going to take you to Baha'u'llah's hand. This is Baha'u'llah, one of Baha'u'llah's tablets in the Baghdad period, which was revealed in honor of one of his companions and apostles, Sheikh Kazim al-Samandar, who was the patriarch or patriarch of the Samandari family, and he was his son Tarazullah Samandari became a hand of the cause of God. He also, as a youth, had attained the presence of Baha'u'lláh. So this is that, and so this is a beautiful tablet in the handwriting of Baha'u'lláh that had been later on illuminated by the recipient of it. It's on a blue paper. It begins with هوالله در این وقت که سماع قدرت الهی به قمر عظمت مزین گشته و امام قدس حضرت لایزالی به انجام رفعت مطرز شده. So you can see that this is, so it's در این وقت که سماع قدرت الهی به قمر عظمت مزین گشته. So this is in the handwriting of the Blessed Beauty. So this, friends, is the real deal. This is what revelation looks like in the hand of the manifestation of God. And we saw it, the ones with the Bab as well, beautifully done here. I have another gift here for you that is very rare, but you're going to see that. This is the opening page of the original manuscript of the Kitab-i-Iqan in the handwriting of Abdul Baha. This is January 1861. We now know the date of it. Abdul Baha at this time was not yet 17 years old. So you have a handwriting of this 16-year-old youth writing so magnificently. It's beautiful. The opening passage of the Kitab-i-Iqan here is in Arabic, the exordium, and then the Persian is all in Shikast Nasta'liq. And what a beautiful Shikast Nasta'liq it is. Now I will tell you, this is a little bit of a zoomed version of that. So this is Jawahir in Bab Anke Salikin Sabile Subul Iman wa Talibin Kaus Iqan. So this is the opening of the Book of Certitude. I will tell you something, it's rather sad. Over the period of Abdul Baha's ministry, because of, he wrote so fast, and he even used to write on his like essentially standing letters and all that. So over a period of time, his handwriting of Shikast Nasta'liq, what obviously was not as masterful as some of the earlier years where he was transcribing and so on and so forth. And that happens with any kind of script, and also with age as well. Particularly the one that I found, which was very touching, is the Abdul Baha's letter to the Baha'i world after the passing of Bahá'u'lláh. It's actually been translated in the selections from the writings of Abdul Baha. For the Holy Year, the House of Justice had sent a copy of it, and it was published in Mahbub-Alam, a commemorative book by the Andalib magazine. And in that, you could see that you can see the grief in the handwriting of Abdul Baha, that how devastated he was for the passing of Bahá'u'lláh, and you could see that it affects one's script or penmanship as well. So this is so this was the Iqan, and then this one is another beautiful copy of, now obviously it's zoomed down. This is the tablet of the Holy Mariner, the Arabic version, because there are two tablets, one in Persian, one in Arabic. And this is in the handwriting of Abdul Baha in Shikaste. Beautiful. Huwa al-Aziz al-Mahbub. You see, that's at the very top. That's the invocation. An ya mallah al-Quds fahsar fi safinat al-baqa fi mala' al-a'la fa subhana rabbi al-afha. So this is the opening of the tablet of the Holy Mariner. And then finally, I just wanted to share with you, this is a letter, this is a prayer that many Persians and Arab Baha'is know. It's a very famous prayer of Shoghi Effendi, Rabbana wa Maladana, Azal Kurubana, Babuzuq Shams Wa'adaka al-Karim. This I really, when I saw this for the first time, it really struck me. This is a young guardian in 1926. So he had just only been a guardian about 4 years when he composed this beautiful prayer. And it's in Shikaste, Nasta'liq. The guardian never set foot in Iran. He was born in the Holy Land and raised there and so on. But yet he was taught, obviously, through the family of Abdul Baha and through the guardianship of Abdul Baha and so on. So the prayer starts here. It goes, and then it's kind of upside down, and then continues here and here. It's written from right to left as opposed to left to right, as some of you know. And then the final verses, this is now upside down, starts here, here, and then at the end of it, he has signed Bandi Astana Shogi, the servant of his threshold Shogi, and then April 1926. So this is 90, we're in April right now, so this is 93 years ago that the Guardian wrote this magnificent prayer that we all know, many of us know by heart. As far as some of the other calligraphers and seeing the scripts, this is a specimen of Mishkin Qalam from the Masnavi Mubarak. This is a Baha'u'llah's couplet, the divine couplet. And then this is my late father's excerpt from Tajalliyat. Fil haqiqe kanz haqiqi baraye insan ilm oust. In truth, knowledge is a veritable treasure. That excerpt. وَأُوست إلت إزت وَنِعمت وَفَرح وَنِشاط وَبِهْجت وَإِنبِساط. Here there's another version of it here, so we can see. So this is in Shikaste script, this one, and then this is in Nastali, and then at the top, he has written Hazrat Bahá'u'lláh mifarmayan in Sols script. So there's basically 3 scripts here in there. I was privileged. He gave this to me in 1991 as a Rizwan present. So it was April of 1991, and I look at this. It's placed in front of my eyes every time I sit at my desk. This is a very precious gift from me. I want to share that with you as well. And then this one, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. It's a beautiful ornate shikaste, a doost. در روضه قلب جز گل عشق مکار. O friend, in the garden of thy heart plant not but the rose of love. So I hope you enjoyed it. This is just to tell, since the Bab had introduced Shikaste, I felt that for some of the friends who may not have had the experience of seeing the script, to see the script in the handwriting of the manifestations, divine interpreters, and some prominent calligraphers as well. Okay, moving on to chapter 3. In the opening lines of chapter 3, the Bab writes, the substance of this gate or chapter is that all in existence hath been created by God for the day of the advent of his manifestation, which in the Bayán hath been referred to as the day of resurrection. And that day begins from the declaration of that tree of truth until the setting of its sun. For example, in the revelation of the point of the Furqan, meaning Prophet Muhammad, that day was 23 years in duration, and all were created for that day. In chapter 3, with about 57 handwritten lines in the original language, it is the longest chapter of book 9. Unfortunately, only about 21% of it, or 1/5 of it, has been translated into English by the Baha'i World Center. The translated excerpts from this chapter is gleaned from the latter part of the chapter, where the Bab is describing the would-be situation of those who come to recognize him whom God shall make manifest, and those who become veiled from recognizing him. For those who would be privileged to recognize him, they would collectively utter these words. And this is, I had to put this introduction here because whenever you read this passage, some of there's no context to it. So this is what the Bab is actually doing. He's for those who become recognized, who are privileged to recognize them, then they would collectively say these words. So, and this is a praise be to God that he hath enabled us to become cognizant of him whom God shall make manifest in the day of resurrection, so that we may derive benefit from the fruit of our existence and be not deprived of attaining the presence of God. For indeed, this is the object of our creation and the sole purpose underlying every virtuous deed we may perform. Such is the bounty which God hath conferred upon us. Verily, he is the all-bountiful, the gracious. And the Bab continues, know thou that thou wilt will succeed in doing so if thou believest with undoubting faith. However, since thou canst not attain this state of undoubting faith, due to the intervening veils of thy selfish desires, therefore thou wilt tarry in the fire through realizing it not, though realizing it not. On the day of his manifestation, unless thou truly believest in him, naught can save thee from the fire, even if thou dost perform every righteous deed. If thou embracest the truth, everything good and seemly shall be set down for thee in the book of God. And by virtue of this, thou wilt rejoice in the all highest paradise until the following resurrection. Consider with due attention, the Bab continues, for the path is very straight, even while it is more spacious than the heavens and the earth and what is between them. For instance, if all those who were expecting the fulfillment of the promise of Jesus had been assured of the manifestation of Muhammad, the apostle of God, not one would have turned aside from the sayings of Jesus. So likewise, in the revelation of the point of the Bayán, if all should be assured that this is that same promised Mahdi whom the apostle of God foretold, not one of the believers in the Quran would turn aside from the sayings of the apostle of God. So likewise, in the revelation of him whom God shall make manifest, behold the same thing, for should all be assured that he is that same he whom God shall make manifest, whom the point of the Bayán hath foretold, not one would turn aside. So that was the end of chapter 3, or at least the excerpts from the chapter 3. Now we're moving on to chapter 4. Chapter 4 begins with these words: God hath prescribed unto all the remembrance of mystery, dhikr sir, which literally means mention or remembrance of mystery. Say, all shall be asked of it. The Bab continues, the substance of this gate or chapter is that all knowledge is knowledge of God. My mistake. I'll repeat that. The substance of this gate or chapter is that all knowledge is knowledge of good qualities and attributes that are embodied within each human being. It is by means of this knowledge that one could avoid bringing sorrow unto themselves and others. That everyone hath been commanded to piety, abstinence, and other such righteous behavior, all stem from this. The Bab further adds, for example, should one be afflicted with poverty but choose contentment and patience, his self-esteem would remain intact and he would not be grieved. And therefore, when the days of his need would have passed, he would not experience any abasement. On the other hand, should he show his poverty, he would at best receive assistance from someone which would remove that which is grieving him. But when he beholdeth himself, the assistance received would never equal the abasement brought about for him. Very interesting. Likewise, behold all attributes and qualifications in every rank. Immediately after this commentary in this chapter, which consists of about 30 handwritten lines in the original language, the Bab continues, and this has been translated by the Baha'i World Center. So it's immediately after that. So the Bab says the reason why remembrance of mystery, zikr ser, hath been enjoined is this. Now, this has been translated as meditation in one's privacy. I am sorry, friends, but I don't see that. And the word, at least in this manuscript, says Zikr ser. Zikr ser means mystery. Zikr means remembrance or mention. There's really no ifs or buts about it. So I put that in dark yellow. That's my obviously insertion there. You may want to look at that passage. I believe, like the other passage, like the starship, if you can come up with an illuminating insight about why I welcome it. Why the World Center back in 1976, why Mr. Habib Tahirzadeh, who was the primary translator, chose to translate that, I don't know. So again, I'm just sharing with you because we are in an academic process here. I felt that I needed to point this out. So the passage, the reason why remembrance of mystery hath been enjoined is this, that thou mayest give thy best attention to the remembrance of God, that thy heart may at all times be animated with his spirit, and not be shut out as by a veil from thy best beloved. Let not thy tongue pay lip service in praise of God, while thy heart be not attuned to the exalted summit of glory and the focal point of communion. Thus, if happily thou dost live in the day of resurrection, the mirror of thy heart will be set towards him who is the day star of truth. So this reference, again, as I said to you, the Bab is anticipating that some of the people who are reading the Bayán are going to be living at the time of the advent of him whom God shall make manifest. So it's very clear. Thus, if happily thou dost live in the day of resurrection. So it is approachable. It is doable. It is near. The mirror of thy heart will be set towards him who is the day star of truth. And no sooner will his light shine forth than the splendor thereof shall forthwith be reflected in thy heart. For he is the source of all goodness, and unto him revert all things. But if he appeareth while thou hast turned unto thyself in meditation, this shall not profit thee, unless thou shalt mention his name by words he hath revealed. So this is the mystery of remembrance that the Bab is divulging. For in the forthcoming revelation, it is he who is the remembrance of God, whereas the devotions which thou art offering at present have been prescribed by the point of the Bayán, while he who will shine resplendent in the day of resurrection is the revelation of the inner reality enshrined in the point of the Bayán, a revelation more potent, immeasurably more potent than the one which hath preceded it. Moving on to chapter 5. In chapter 5, the Bab gets into a relatively long commentary on yet another dimension of the day of resurrection, of him whom God shall make manifest. Among other things, he states that on that day, which is also the day of his own return, all the believers in the Bayán are obliged or obligated to serve him at least for 19 days and do his bidding implicitly. I think the wisdom of this is that when you make the followers of your faith obligated to serve the next revealer of the word of God, i.e., him whom God shall make manifest, then they're committed to obey him and do his service. So every believer must serve him whom God shall make manifest at least for 19 days, one full Bábí calendar, Baha'i Bábí calendar month. So very fascinating. Unfortunately, no parts of this chapter have been translated into English by the Baha'i World Center, nor parts of it have been discussed by Dr. Saidi in his book. With about 44 handwritten lines in the original language, chapter 5 is the second longest chapter of book 9. Moving on to chapter 6. Chapter 6 begins with these words, on that it is incumbent upon all people to honor and respect the family of the point of truth, the Bab, when those family members are accounted among the faithful. The substance of this gate or chapter is, know verily that no land is more favorable than the place where the revelation takes place, and no names are closer to God than the letters of the first unity. Again, no parts of this chapter has been translated or discussed. It has about 29 handwritten lines in the original language. Moving on to chapter 7. Now, chapter 7 begins with these words on prohibiting or prohibitions of selling asafoetida. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it. This is al-anquz, this is a type of plant which has you can Google it. It actually, it is there, and you'll see it's used in the Indian culture as well as some parts of Persia, particularly north eastern part. So asafoetida or foetida, and the leaf of the tree of hell, waraqa al-zaqum. Zaqum is a tree, according to the Quran, that is in hell. It's one of the trees, or one of the prominent trees in hell. So the Bab here says the leaf of the tree of hell, which is a reference to tobacco. And 4 lines later, he actually makes it even more explicit. He says tobacco and items similar to it have been forbidden. So plants like marijuana and all that, these are all covered by the Bab here. He says anything tobacco or any type of similar to it have been forbidden, including whatsoever is transported from the direction of Khorasan, which has a pungent odor, and that is that asafoetida comes from there, which has a pungent odor and is of similar nature. Anything that is malodorous, that has a pungent odor, is forbidden. Okay, and this is one of the commandments of the Bayán. It's a relatively short chapter. In chapter 8, the Bab prohibits the use of opium, intoxicating liquors, and any other substance which may be identified as a type of drugs. So he actually says that any type of drugs, absolutely. Now again, drugs that have been prescribed later on by competent physician, Bahá'u'lláh has said that is obviously is acceptable, but here the Bab says opium, taryak, and intoxicating liquors, any type of liquors, and any other substance which may be identified, meaning that if the society identifies that as being some kind of a drug. So meth today, some of these synthetic drugs that we're seeing, that are the abominations of our societies, if you will, have completely been forbidden. These injunctions have all been reconfirmed and reinstated by Baha'u'lláh in the Kitab Aqdas. You can look at paragraph 119, 155, 190. At the end of 190, Baha'u'lláh even says, "Innahu laysa minni." He who takes parts in it is verily not of me. So Baha'u'lláh completely disowns anyone who partakes in any kind of illicit drugs or any kind of intoxicating or any kind of hallucinogens or any of this sort of drugs that later on we saw, like LSD, and various other things. Even though any governments may legalize some of them, like marijuana is now legal in Canada, medicinal marijuana, I believe, and some recreational ones to some degree, but it's been forbidden by 2 revelations, actually 3 revelations. But anyhow, moving on. So this is chapter 8, moving on to chapter 9. Chapter 9, it's the second last. The Bab forbids any type of congregational prayer except in the case of prayer for the dead. This injunction has also been reiterated and reconfirmed by Baha'u'lláh in his most holy book. You can see paragraph 12 of that. I want to share with you something that kind of came up when I was reading the Kitab al-Aqdas. In paragraph 129 of the Kitab al-Aqdas, Baha'u'lláh is talking about the inscription on the rings for the dead. And at first, Baha'u'lláh reveals two verses, one for men and one for women. And then, this is where it's very beautiful. And then there is this conversation that ensues, where, and I will read this for you, very fascinating. And then the Báb comes in, the voice of the Báb. So these are the verses that were revealed aforetime by lo, the point of the Bayán now calleth out, exclaiming, O best beloved. So the Báb is now, the spirit of the Báb is now speaking to Baha'u'lláh, saying, O best beloved of the worlds, reveal thou in their stead such words as will waft the fragrance of thy gracious favors over all mankind. We have announced unto everyone that one single word from thee excelleth all that hath been sent down in the Bayán. This is a reference to Book 6, Chapter 5. You can look it up. We talked about it. Thou indeed hast power to do what pleaseth thee. Deprive not thy servants of the overflowing bounties of the ocean of thy mercy. Thou in truth art he whose grace is infinite. So the Báb is now stepping in and saying, you know, do something differently than these two verses that were actually revealed by the Báb, one for the men, one for the women. And here Baha'u'lláh continues, or responds. Behold, we have hearkened to his call and now fulfill his wish. Baha'u'lláh says, he verily is the best beloved, the answerer of prayers. If the following verse, which hath at this moment been sent down by God, be engraved upon the burial rings of both men and women, it shall be better for them. We of a certainty are the supreme ordainer. And then Baha'u'lláh reveals this verse, I came forth from God and return unto him, detached from all save him, holding fast to his name, the merciful, the compassionate. Thus doth, again, that was the end of the quote, thus doth the Lord single out whomsoever he desireth for a bounty from his presence. He is in very truth the God of might and power. So I found that really fascinating that the Báb stepped in and said, reveal something new. And the Báb revealed one for both men and women that is now engraved on the burial rings. So very fascinating. And I thought to bring it in when we're talking about the rites and rituals of the dead and the prayer for the dead here that the Baha'u'lláh has already expounded on and has reaffirmed that, the congregational prayer. So this is verbatim. This injunction of the Báb in chapter 9 of book 9 is exactly been reiterated by Baha'u'lláh that no congregational prayer shall be allowed except the prayer for the dead, which the Báb had also stated. Moving on to the last chapter of book 10, it is entitled On the Purity of the Land of Souls. Very mysterious title, On the Purity of the Land of Souls. The chapter begins with these words, the substance of this gate or chapter is that for everything there is some form of purification in the knowledge of God, and all will become pure through the mention of God if they become a believer in him whom God shall make manifest. 5 lines later, the Báb continues, and this is the excerpt that has been translated by the Baha'i World Center. Know thou that in the Bayán, purification is regarded as the most acceptable means for attaining nearness unto God and as the most meritorious of all deeds. Thus purge thou thine ear that thou mayest hear no mention besides God, and purge thine eye that it beholdeth not accept God, and thy conscience that it perceiveth not other than God, and thy tongue that it proclaimeth not else but God, and thy hand to write not but the words of God, and thy knowledge that it comprehendeth not except God, and thy heart that it entertaineth no wish save God. And in like manner, purge all thine acts and thy pursuits, that thou mayest be nurtured in the paradise of pure love, and perchance mayest attain the presence of him whom God shall make manifest, adorned with the purity which he highly cherisheth, and be sanctified from whosoever hath turned away from him and doth not support him. Thus shalt thou manifest a purity that shall profit thee. The Bab continues, know thou that every ear which hearkeneth unto his words with true faith shall be immune from the fire. Thus the believer, through his recognition of him, will appreciate the transcendent character of his heavenly words, will wholeheartedly choose him over others, and will refuse to incline his affections towards those who disbelieve in him. Whatever one gaineth in the life to come is but the fruit of this faith. Indeed, any man whose eye gazeth upon his words with true faith well deserveth paradise, and on whose conscience beareth witness unto his words with true faith shall abide in paradise and attain the presence of God. And one whose tongue giveth utterance to his words with true faith shall have his abode in paradise, wherein he will be seized with ecstasy in praise and glorification of God, the ever abiding, whose revelations of glory never end, and the reviving breaths of whose holiness never fail. Every hand which setteth down his words with true faith shall be filled by God, both in this world and in the next, with things that are highly prized. And every breast which committeth his words to memory, God shall cause, if it were that of a believer, to be filled with his love, and every heart which cherisheth the love of his words, and manifesteth in itself the signs of true faith when his name is mentioned, and exemplifieth the words, their hearts are thrilled with awe at the mention of God. This is from the Quran. That heart will become the object of the glances of divine favor, and on the day of resurrection will be highly praised by God. The Bab continues after that passage, know thou that by purification of souls is not meant that thou should only recite the words revealed by God, for the beginning of your religion hath already been established through the phrase, there is no God but God. What is truly intended by purification of souls is that thou may purify thyself from all that which is not for God, ladun Allah, so that thou could attain unto that which is for God, lillah. So this concept of lillah, which Dr. Saidi has talked about it, that we discussed as well, this concept that is very pivotal in the Bayán, in the last few chapters, we've seen that. The antithesis of that is ladun Allah. So ladun Allah versus lillah. So the Bab says here, what is truly is intended by this purification of soul is that you purify yourself from that which is not for God, ladun Allah, so that you could attain unto that which is for God, lillah. Chapter 10 consists of about 38 handwritten lines in the original language, and the excerpts that we read or constitute about 45% of what the chapter consists of, which have been translated by the Baha'i World Center. Well, friends, this ends book 9 and the end of the Bayán Farsi. It has been really an honor to be able to be here. It has been a tremendous privilege for me to study this with you. It took now 3 full months for us to explore this, and I'm sure we are richer by it. It has really changed me in a way that I'm more aware of certain realities, by the study of this. So allow yourself to assimilate all this knowledge, all this rich information that is imparted by the Bab to us in this very special holy year that we have in 2019. And I wish you well, and thank you again for the Wilmette Institute that putting out this, this course and allowing me to humbly serve you and be able to share all the information with you. Dr. Stockman, any questions we have now? I'm happy to answer.
Right, we do have a few, and I want to thank you also, Shahrokh, for this fascinating, really odyssey, an expansion through this remarkable book by the Bab, and the lengthy study of it. We must have about 15 hours worth of video about it. Yeah. And I don't know if anyone's done ever something quite like that before. So we're very grateful, and I'm glad your voice held up.
Yes.
I'm glad you're coming.
It's been really a pleasure. It's been wonderful. But I tell you, it's since when I started till yet last night, intermittently and all that, I was engaged, in that, and it's what a magnificent work to be engaged with. I feel a little bit closer to the Bab now, a lot closer to the Bab. I mean, I've always adored and loved the Bab and was fascinated by his sacrifice, by his writings. But I think through the Bayán, I have now gained not only a new degree of respect and adoration and devotion for him, but just an awe of just what this manifestation of God really brought, and it's tremendous. It's tremendous.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and we're very grateful, really, for this fantastic effort on your part. We do have a few questions. Stuart says, when writing with the script in circles or the pentagram, did one start from the center and work out, or start on the outside and work in? And was there any significance to one way or the other?
I think the Bab, as you could see in that circle, he starts from the outer edges and moves to it's from the outer to the inner, so it's the outer world to the inner world, and that's the way in that, it's not from the inner to the outer, or at least not in the ones that I had seen there. So that's
which means you have to calculate very carefully, because you don't want to run out of space before.
This is why it's a miracle. My father, who was a very, very accomplished, calligrapher, he was at awe to see. He says, "This is like, it's miraculous." A merchant, that has this, and again, to have this kind of this type of penmanship, to be able to reveal with such speed, with such beauty, such, I mean, that the same thing with Baha'u'lláh. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. It's truly a miracle, you know. So yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, there's no computer graphics to try to aid you
No,
to do this. You know, this is all done. Yeah,
you got to imagine it. You got to do it that way.
exactly. Yeah.
That's great. And Stuart adds, thank you for the close-ups. I think now I can distinguish between Persian and Arabic scripts, maybe. The trick is to look for the qafs and the chs and the p's and a few other things like that. And otherwise, you've got to look for the Persian verbs at the ends of the sentences. That's how I do it. And then he adds, by the way, my wife and I were given a beautiful calligraphy of the greatest name, a different version than usual, as a wedding present from a friend of Sharoch's, done by Sharoch's father. We have it displayed in our home, and it's beautiful. I think you gave me one too. It really is a beautiful rendition of the greatest name that your father developed.
Yes, it's become very popular now. It's part of the public domain, so the friends can have access to it, and you know, there are a lot of jewelers that are starting to utilize it, and it's beautiful. Yes, he did it for the in the anticipation of the Holy Year in 1992. It was actually first published in 1990, and then 1992, but it was approved by the House, and it's beautiful. It's like a flame. It's quite a work. Yes.
Nasreen asks this very interesting question. Does Bob say anything about taqiyya in the Bayán? Dissimulation.
We from what we read, did you see anything? I mean, I know there was nothing. That concept is a very, there's been a lot of scholarly discussions about that. I mean, obviously, Bob allowed Sayyid Hussein Yazdi to recant his faith, so he could take the Bab's last message and some of the letters that he had back to the friends and to Baha'u'lláh and so on. But as far as that is, I don't believe that anyone, even in the Bábí world, I mean, letters of the living, I mean, none of them practice that. I mean, I can't imagine Hussein or Qudus or Tahir practicing that. They could have, saved their lives. They didn't. So many of the martyrs of the faith were, you know, and later on, Sayyid Hussein Yazdi was martyred during the Bábí pogrom of 1852. So he certainly did not deny his faith. So yeah, that concept of taqiyya is it's a little tricky. You have to. It's common in Shia Islam, but in the Baha'i faith, there is none. There is none.
Yeah.
We know of. I mean, even others who have suggested that maybe Baha'u'lláh allowed it in the early days. Absolutely not, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, if he did, we wouldn't have all these prominent clergy martyrs of the faith, like Badi, like you know, King and the Beloved of the Martyrs. You know, so no taqiyya.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too, though, is that people, apparently one of the traditional definitions of taqiyya includes what we call hikmat. And so from what I've seen, some people say that hikmat is a kind of taqiyya, which is allowed. But that's a confusion I heard from a Persian Baha'i who lived, an Arab Baha'i who lived in Europe, who insisted that form of taqiyya has continued. So,
well, hikmat, first of all, means wisdom. And
right.
To exercise prudence and wisdom, Baha'u'lláh says, and the Guardian, actually, there's a quote that the Guardian quotes Baha'u'lláh and interprets that. He says that Baha'u'lláh has stated, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can find it in the writings of Shovi Effendi, where he says, Baha'u'lláh has stated that you should not lie, but you don't have to disclose every truth, you know?
Right.
And that's where the prudence is. It's like, you know, you don't go in the Azadi Square in Tehran and yell out, "I'm a Baha'i." You know, I mean, it's insanity to do that.
Right. And there were Christian martyrs who did do that in the Roman period, by the way.
Yeah,
which was condemned.
Well, they were not very bright. Let me put it that way. So, but to be challenged, in interrogations of so many people that come to mind, just some of the even more recent martyrs of the faith, some of the martyr women's like Zarine Morimi, who she was interrogated, she was blindfolded, all of this where where there is no dissimulation, there is, they remain resolute, but again, when you're asked, are you a Baha'i? You say, yes, I'm a Baha'i. Or when do you believe in Bahá'u'lláh? Yes. There is a wonderful story. Again, I won't take too much of the time here, from one of the great early believers, where he was caught by a ruffian and said that, I hear that you're a Baha'i. And this guy had a knife and was going to kill this this believer, this prominent believer, and he said that, I've heard that you curse the Quran, that you Baha'is, or you Bábís and all that, you curse the Quran, you do this, you everything, and he says, is that true? Are you a Baha'i? And he says, I am not that Baha'i that you're thinking, so
Yeah.
so basically he got away. And he says, no, that is not, I am not that Baha'i that you are thinking. And which was the truth. He was not that Baha'i. He was another Baha'i. But he used that in a very clever way to get out of it, because he thought to himself later that if I got martyred here for no good reason, it would not really, I mean, he was willing to lay down his life, but in a more worthier, but not by a thug in the middle of the night.
The middle of the night, yeah.
Yeah,
He was just stealing his money anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So he felt that this was, but he did not practice taqiyya.
Yeah.
And anyways, so there is wisdom, but then there's an explicit, based recanting of one faith that's obviously not, it's not in the cause of the Bab at all. I don't see that at all.
Nesreen also says, thank you so much for the best webinar. And Stuart says, thank you for sharing all your knowledge and insights with us, and for a remarkable endeavor. And Annette says, thank you so much for sharing your scripts in Shikasteh with us. They are so beautiful. This has given me such a new way of understanding the writings of Baha'u'lláh. So much love in your work. Heather says, where can we find any books with the calligraphy of your father? I would like to see more.
If you email me, I will be more than happy to share with you. But right now, there is if you go to the referencebaha'i.org, there is actually a complete book of selections from the tablets of Baha'u'lláh and Abdul Baha, that is called Hadiqe Irfan. It's a garden of knowledge. And the House of Justice posted this. These were previously untranslated, previously unpublished works of both Baha'u'lláh and Abdul Baha, which were published in the Andalib magazine, which was a very prominent magazine, Persian magazine, scholarly magazine as well, that lasted for 18 years. And my late father, was part of the editorial board of Andalib, which was under the auspices of the National Spiritual Assemblies of Baha'is of Canada. And this book was really the kind of the culmination of those years. And it's in both Shikasteh and Nasta'alib. The script is there, so it's posted. If you go under Hadiqe Irfan and you download that, you can actually see the script of these tablets. So the house have put that there. As far as other works, if you email me, I can give you some references to some of the other works. But we're working on getting more of his works become available as far as and displayed as part of the heritage of the Baha'i world. I mean, he happens to be my biological father, but he's was a very prominent and dearly loved individual by the house. They wrote after his death, they referred to him as the dearly beloved servant of the Blessed Beauty. So he did well, you know.
What more could you ask for?
Exactly. So
could you ask for?
Yeah. So anyways, any other questions?
Well, again, mostly people are thanking you. Nasreen, I think, already has, but she's thank you so much for your web talk. It was very helpful, and for showing us the Nestalik writings. And so that's basically everybody is thanking you at this point, and that seems to be the end of the comments. So I think we're all, again, very grateful, and I will thank you for, I think, my third or fourth time on top of everybody else's.
I'm very thankful that the friends took, you know, the greatest reward for any instructor or a teacher is seeing people taking so much from the presentation. Obviously, I was the tour guide. You know, you should pray to Bahá'u'lláh and the Báb for gifting us this. I mean, I was just the tour guide here, just showing you the beauty of this magnificent work. And as a result, I, you know, took in so much of it myself. So I thank you for allowing this to become a course. I thank the Wilmette Institute, Dr. Stockman especially, for you know, for being there, being supportive. Also Nima, you know, for also assisting and being here. And thank you for everybody. And I think this is great. There should be a lot more studies of such works of the Báb, and I'm sure there are more scheduled by great scholars more knowledgeable than me. Dr. Mujan Momen, Dr. Todd Lawson, you know, they're going to be, you know, Dr. Omid Qaim Maqami, and hopefully even we can get Dr. Saidi. I mean, just magnificent contributions they have made. So
we have 3 talks on the Qayyum al-Asma scheduled in the summer by Todd Lawson. And that should be quite a special treat for us to
definitely highly recommend
with him. Yeah. That will be really quite good. And so Hala also says thank you, and Doug Lador says you made this course great. Glory be to God. And I think that's a fitting ending for this particular session.